Hello. Well, let's start with a bit of music.
Là 300 ans qui prennent nos hommes, qui nous traitent comme des bêtes de somme, ça ne pouvait pas durer toujours. Ça ira, ça ira, ça ira, les
That song is Edith Piaf's version of a French revolutionary song called Ça ira, which is usually translated as It'll be fine. And there are modern words to it now, but the original song, which is still sung with some gusto, in fact translates as something like, let's hang all the aristocrats from the lampposts. The fact that it's sung with such gusto tells you a lot about the French attitude to government, a sort of us and them attitude, which has not changed since the original French Revolution. And I'm going to compare the modern revolution now with the one in 1968, because it has some really striking differences. Everybody's used to the idea of the French rioting. But first of all, it's different because of the composition of the rioters. There were recently some pretty awful riots in the banlieue involving the residents of these building projects, who are mostly North African immigrants and nearly all Muslim. Now, those riots were pretty terrible and trashed Paris. The riots that are being done now are also trashing Paris. They've just finished, haven't they? They're also trashing Paris, but they're a completely different demographic. Have you noticed there's none of these North African immigrants are actually participating in this? It's all white, and we're given to understand working class French people of a Christian heritage. There may be some Muslims among them, but if they are, they're an integrated group who are not distinguishable from the rest of the French population. Now, why is this important? Well, ostensibly, the whole thing has to do with petrol or diesel tax, which President Macron has imposed, again, ostensibly for ecological reasons. The problem is everyone knows it isn't. The fact is that the French government is desperately scrabbling around for another source of funds because it's running out of money. And this ecological reason is a scam, and the French people know that, and that's why they're out on the streets. If we look at the 1968 riots, which actually didn't achieve much, except for a romantic aura afterwards, they still refer to people who took part in these riots as the 68ers. That was in part a communist revolution, but also it was driven by university students and their professors. Hang on, Alicia Johansson Rubin, the Paris bureau chief for the New York Times, put it this way: universities across the country shut down as students, often joined by their professors. Just a minute, something's happened with my phone here. Oh, okay. Yep. Universities across the country shut down as students, often joined by their professors, occupied the classrooms and courtyards. In Paris and other major French cities, workers, students, intellectuals, and that's the important word, intellectuals, and anyone else who was interested thronged into the streets for mass rallies. The fact is that university departments were covered in posters for, communist Trotsky, Lenin, that sort of thing. A few factories were taken over by their workers who put up signs saying that they were seizing the means of production. So there was this communist element. But the whole thing was led by intellectuals. And as Stalin once remarked to Churchill, how many divisions do they have? And they didn't have any. And the whole thing fizzled out. You see, you can have movements led by intellectuals, but if you don't have the workers behind you, you don't have anything, really, the mass of the people. The French Revolution itself was started when the mass of the people got angry about the fact that bread, the price of bread was going up. Well, nowadays nobody worries about bread, but they worry about fuel because they need fuel to get to work, to earn the bread and, and so on. So when Macron did this, it showed he was completely disconnected from his own people. And that is, in my opinion, one of the big problems with the EU, because the ruling classes, the intellectuals, feel they can tell people what to do, but they have no connection with the people who are actually there on the ground trying to earn a living. So the French riots that are going on now, or have just finished, caused Macron to back down on the fuel tax. That's fine, but I think it's going to have a far more profound result as well, because people are now getting the feeling that their government is too remote from them, and the only way that they can deal with things is to turn up on the streets. Now, the interesting thing is that's happening in Britain as well. And they've turned up on the streets, but they don't burn cars. I'm not sure how much the rallies are going to affect the way our parliament conducts itself. I want to do a thing about the Brexit in another video, but for this I just want to say that my belief is that this is Macron's weak point, and that in the next, these people aren't going to forget this attempt to tax them beyond reasonable limits. And in the next election, my prediction is that Marine Le Pen or her party or some other party, perhaps even more extreme than her, is going to do a lot better in those elections than anything that Macron or or whoever comes after him is going to field from the standard parties. And I think to a certain extent this is a huge turning point in European history. I'm very grateful for financial contributions, but if you don't want to give money, you can still help a lot by sharing this and other videos I've made. Also, remember to check your subscription from time to time, as sometimes subscriptions get erased for one reason or another. Till next time.